After winning our first round matchup, we were taking on the top-seeded Celtics in the second round of the playoffs, who were led by star point guard Rajon Rondo and center Kevin Garnett. Can we pull off the series upset against this super team? Let's find out. Game 1 was in Boston, and unfortunately for us, we were dealing with an injury this series. Our rookie starting power forward Lonnie Roberts had injured his ankle in the last game of our series against the Sixers, but he was still starting for us and playing through the injury this series against the Celtics. We had split the season series evenly with this Boston team this past season, so I had a feeling that this was going to be a close and competitive series against them, as Brandon Jennings would knock down this three to give us a 5-point lead at the end of the first quarter. While he was a great facilitator, Rajon Rondo was one of the main scorers in this high-powered Boston offense, but we couldn't ignore him as we also had to watch out for Paul Pierce as well on the court. If we wanted to win this series against them, we would have to outshoot them from deep, as it would be nearly impossible to try and slow down this super team offense and win with minimal scoring against them. We were doing a good job in the first half, but their offense was still keeping them in this game as well, but Brandon Jennings would get a clutch steal from Rondo and would take it down and slam it home in transition for our last bucket of the first half, and we would head into halftime up by 9 over the Celtics in game 1. We would continue our hot streak and strike first to start the second half of the game, and at this point we were starting to pile on our lead over the Celtics throughout the third quarter. I was so surprised that we had managed to go up by 21 over the top seeded team in game 1, and that lead was still building for us throughout the rest of the third quarter tonight as we headed into the fourth up by 26. Things weren't getting much better for the Celtics as we were still shooting the lights out in the fourth, and with one last shot from our rookie Dante Wooden, we would go up an astounding 30 points over the Celtics and would take game 1 in convincing fashion over them. Time to see if that win was a fluke or if we could replicate it in game 2. We were breaking out the alternate jerseys for this road game, but we're also turning it over to start as the Celtics would get the first basket of the night. Finally, we would respond with our first points on a fast break bucket from Larry Sanders. Boston was doing a good job of moving the ball around on offense tonight and finding the open man for quality looks like this, but with Brandon Jennings leading the way for us this quarter on offense, we were still able to stay in this game. As with one last possession this quarter, Kyle Korver would tie it up with a three-pointer for us at 14 apiece headed into the second. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to take the lead first this quarter as Ray Allen would convert an and one play for the Celtics, and their lead would now continue to grow here in the second quarter over us. We now found ourselves down by 6 to Boston and needed to try and catch back up to them before halftime, but no matter what we did, we just couldn't seem to stop them on offense so far tonight. There were plenty times where we could get a defensive stop against them and have a chance to tie it up, but we hadn't been able to convert any of those offensive opportunities yet so far. We would at least get one more three-pointer from rookie Dante Wooden to cut this lead before halftime, as he would help send us into the locker room only down by 4. The Celtics would come out and go right to Paul Pierce to get their second half started for them, but we would respond with our pick and roll duo and Jennings and Bogut that had been working so well for us all season long. After finding Larry Sanders on the fast break, we would finally have a chance to take our first lead tonight, and that would be the case as Lonnie Roberts would drain this corner 3 for us to take the lead. Now it was a matter of making sure we could get defensive stops against Boston's offense to try and hold our lead. It had taken nearly 3 quarters for us to get one tonight, so we knew it would be trouble if we gave it up headed into the fourth, as thankfully we would get a stop on their last possession of the third quarter tonight and would head into the fourth tied up at 41 apiece. We would take the first lead of the fourth quarter and were hoping this would set the tone to end the game tonight, but if we were going to do that, we would need more 3-point shots like this to fall for us this quarter. Boston was keeping it close all quarter long though, as Ray Allen would give them their first lead of the fourth tonight, and now the Celtics seemed to have picked up some momentum on offense and we would need to get a stop quickly. Thankfully, we would manage to do that next possession as Rajon Rondo's shot would be off the mark and Brandon Jennings would push it up in transition and would in turn find Dante Wooden for another huge three-pointer to take the lead back for us. Down by 1, Boston needed a bucket to stay alive in this game, and we would make the mistake of sending Ray Allen to the free throw line, and he would end up knocking down both free throws for them to take the lead. Once again though, our rookie would step up big for us though with a corner 3 off the inbounds, but Paul Pierce and the Celtics offense would wind the clock down on the final possession and would send us to overtime with this buzzer-beating shot. They would go right back to him as he would score the first basket of overtime for the Celtics, and that first bucket would unfortunately set the tone for the rest of the game for both teams, as even though Dante Wooden would get it down to just a 2-point game for us with this shot, Boston would walk away with a game 2 victory here tonight in overtime, and the winner of this next game had a chance to take control of this series. We were back in Milwaukee after losing in overtime in game 2, and we wanted to take control of the series tonight. We would open up with the first bucket of the night on an offensive putback from Larry Sanders, and while our offense was off to a hot start tonight, Boston was doing a great job of keeping up with us, as they would rip Brandon Jennings on one end and Rondo would slam it down on the other to to extend their first quarter lead to 4. And one last possession for Paul Pierce would make it a 6-point lead for them headed into the second quarter. Things were not looking good for us so far tonight, but hopefully this play would help swing the momentum our way. And it seemed to help as we got down to within only a 1-point deficit of the Celtics in the second, and then would finally take our first lead of the night since the first quarter on this fadeaway jumper from Tyson Chandler. We would trade leads for a few possessions until Dante Wood knocked down this fast break 3-pointer, but it would still be a close one as we only had a 2-point lead headed into halftime. Hopefully we could extend our lead here in the second half as we would get the first bucket to start things out, and halfway through the quarter now, our lead was starting to grow over the Celtics. Just like the first half though, they would fight back and keep themselves from falling too far behind, as Rajon Rondo would eventually get it down to just a 1-point game for them near the end of the third, and after completing the 3-point play for his team, we would be tied until Brandon Jennings would send us to the fourth quarter with a 2-point lead with this mid-range jumper. It looked like this was going to be another close finish in game 3 of the series tonight, but we were hitting some big shots to start the fourth quarter thankfully. Boston would stay in it and get it down to a 3-point game though with just over a minute to go, and had a golden opportunity to make it a 1-possession game, but Rondo would blow a wide open layup for the Celtics. Jennings would be intentionally fouled and would knock down both of his free throws, and that would get us out of game 3 safely here at home as we would take a 2-1 series lead over Boston and would now have a chance to go up 3-1 with another home game coming up next. This was a big game for us as we had a chance to take a 3-1 series lead. It would be huge for us if we could put the pressure on Boston because they were the ones who were expected to have an easy series win this round. It would be a lot tougher playing with their backs against the wall in front of their home fans, but it was clear to us tonight that Boston did not want to have to deal with that situation at all, and they were doing their best to try and extend this lead they had finally captured. But we weren't going to let that happen as Brandon Jennings would find the rookie Dante Wooden for a 3 to put us up by 1. Ray Allen would manage to get one last bucket though for his team before halftime to take the lead back, so we'd head to halftime down by 1 to the Celtics. We would get the second half started by taking the lead right back from them though, and it was at this point in the game that we were really starting to heat up on offense as a team, as we would manage to go up by double digits over Boston before the end of the third quarter. But sure enough, they would keep fighting throughout the third and would get it back to just a 4-point game, and before long, the next thing we knew, it was tied up in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes to go. Our offense needed to get it going here in the fourth like we did to start the third quarter earlier tonight, because we could not let Boston have the momentum in this series headed back on the road after this. Sure enough, they would manage to take the lead over us here with a minute 54 to go in the game, but rookie Lonnie Roberts would come up huge for us and would tie it back up with a 3. This would allow us to get another look on our next possession after a defensive stop, and it would be Brandon Jennings who would give us the lead. Then it looked like we got another stop, but the Celtics would still get a basket, so now it would come down to free throws for us as Brandon Jennings would sink both of his, but we would leave Ray Allen open for 3 and he would tie it up. It was looking like we might go to overtime again this game, but Dante Wooden off the inbounds pass on a fadeaway 3 would knock it down, and Boston would have one last shot, but Pierce could not get it off in time before the buzzer as we would pick up a huge game 4 victory here at home, and we're now headed back to Boston with a chance to close this series out in 5. This was the biggest game of the series in the past 2 seasons as we had a chance to eliminate the top-seeded Boston Celtics from the playoffs on their home court. We were hoping these throwback jerseys we were wearing could help us get the win tonight, and so far we had yet to give up our lead throughout the entire first quarter, but Boston would manage to tie it up before the end of the quarter at 12 apiece, but with 4.4 seconds left to go, Mbah a Moute would get to the free throw line for us, and the big man would sink both of his free throws and gave us the 2-point lead headed into the second. We didn't want another close game tonight, especially one on the road against Boston, so we came out swinging in the second quarter to try and extend our lead before halftime, as we would eventually get it up to double digits over the Celtics with under 2 minutes to go, and that is where it would end up staying for the rest of the quarter as we would have a 10-point lead headed into the second half. We were only 1/2 away from advancing to the conference finals in our second season with the Bucks, but we had to kill this momentum that Boston had picked up to start the second half tonight, because they had gotten our lead back down to only single digits with less than a minute to go, and it was looking like we could have another nail-biter tonight. Every game after game 1 had come down to the last few possessions or overtime so far this series, and we were doing everything in our power to avoid that again in the possibility of a game 6. With just over 2 minutes to go, we finally would extend our lead to over 10 for the first time tonight, and this great play by Brandon Jennings would pretty much seal the game for us, as that seemed to wipe away any small bit of momentum or hope that Boston had left in them, as with one last shot, we had finally done what many thought to be impossible, as we completed the upset of the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics in only 5 games, but would now face what many people considered to be the real best team in the East this year, which was the 2nd seeded Miami Heat led by LeBron James.